I want to emphasize it was not a negotiation between the parties. None of them came here to do that, but they came here to have a conversation which could inform them, perhaps, hopefully a little bit, but also us, to explore how governance can be resumed and how you begin to continue the progress of the last 20 years.
So was it more than simply an informal meeting, or are you hoping to move this to another level?
Well, no, I think this is an informal meeting. It's an academic meeting at a university where the parties came to be able to explore their dynamics, to be able to have a candid, out of the spotlight, frank conversation with people who know something about the issue and care about the issue. I mean, a lot of us have been involved in the issues of Northern Ireland for a long time, going back to the 1970s.
So is it time now, particularly with no devolution in Northern Ireland, for an American administration to get more involved?
Well, that's not my decision, obviously, to make, and I don't want to be, kibitzing from the sidelines on that. I think historically, we've been privileged to be able to help according to the wishes of the parties themselves. And I think that it's important not for me to get out ahead of that, but for the parties to sort of think about whatever the conversation was that took place here. And I think it's important for a dialogue to begin as to how do you take the steps necessary to calm things down a little bit, begin to diminish the back and forth politically, rhetorically, and start to get some concrete steps forward that could get things on track.
But do you want to get more involved personally? For example, if you were asked to chair the talks in Northern Ireland, would you say yes?
No, I've had zero thought about that or consideration of it. That didn't come up. It's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here really was a very positive, constructive exercise. George Mitchell sat in on the conversation today. We had my former chief of staff from the State Department, former national security deputy advisor, and former aide to Secretary Clinton. So we had knowledgeable people around the table.
You do have a skill set, your experience in the Middle East, your experience as a politician.
I'm continuing.
Would suggest that you would be the kind of individual that might be useful.
Well, that's not for me to judge, and that's certainly not for this moment to begin to be considering. I think that.
But is it something that you wouldn't rule out?
I remain, right now, I'm not into ruling out or ruling in anything, period. And I don't want to get in trouble by saying I'm not ruling anything out or anything in. I'm not even thinking about it.
But you have a deep personal interest in Ireland, so it would be something...
You can ask this question 50 different ways, and I'm going to tell you continually, it's not on the radar screen right now, or at any time that I'm aware of, so I'm not going to deal with any hypotheticals, period.
Has anyone asked you to step in?
Nobody has asked me to do anything except take part in an academic exercise here at Yale, which I happily do as a senior fellow at Yale and somebody who cares enormously about a lot of international events right now.
In the past, we've had American politicians in Northern Ireland.
Well, I sent Gary Hart there. He was my nominee through President Obama to go there and work on the issue. I just saw Gary a couple of nights ago in Colorado. I think he worked hard and effectively at the issue.
And is it time for President Trump to do the same?
Well, I think that the administration obviously should stop and think about something that has been an enormous investment of Republican and Democrat administrations alike, and I hope they would do it. But I don't want to be in, I just don't want to be casually giving advice here about their policy choices at this point on this.
In the past, you've spoken about Brexit. What concerns you particularly about Brexit when it comes to Northern Ireland and the border?
Well, under the Stormont Agreement, the last 20 years have been characterized by a border which people have been able to cross easily, and the great demarcation points and infrastructure that defined that border 20 years ago is gone today. You can drive from the Republic of Ireland into Northern Ireland and there's a sign and that's it. If you have a certain kind of Brexit with a hard border, which is unacceptable obviously to certain parties as a matter of a red line, you could see great difficulties emerge as a consequence of that.
Do you have any concerns that Brexit will change the relationship between Northern Ireland and the United States?
I have concerns that depending on what kind of Brexit takes place, it could have a negative impact on the progress made of the last 20 years. It could reheat passions one way or the other, or both, depending on what it is. So I think we have to see how this is going to be resolved. Obviously, the question of Northern Ireland has been a major hurdle to get over in this process. And I think now the ripeness of a specific proposal is on the table, and I think it's up for you folks to think that through.
Your big hope is that it can be solved.
Imperative, I believe, that it be solved in a way that it does not reignite the troubles.